Number 10. Squidward and Clarinet Land. This is an interesting episode, and no doubt one of the strangest.
One Krabby Patty coming up. Mr. Squidward, you're in a chipper mood this morning.
Squidward happily waits for one of his clarinet recitals until his clarinet gets a little smudged.
This is unacceptable. Nice to have you back, Squidward.
Okay, that was kind of funny.
I demand a place to put my stuff. I guess you could rustle something up for you.
Mr. Krabs offers him his old Navy locker, but since SpongeBob wants to use it as well, he and Squidward have to share.
I suppose I can share. Just don't touch my clarinet.
I promise nothing untoward will happen.
Matters get a little more intriguing when SpongeBob begins making some renovations to the locker, which makes Squidward increasingly nervous.
My clarinet! SpongeBob!
Time for a trip down the Fly of Despair.
Where am I?
In order to retrieve his clarinet, Squidward has to face a gauntlet of bizarre obstacles.
I am the keeper of the Horned Forest.
When Squidward finally catches up with the cackling menace, it turns out that it was just a nightmare. Honestly guys, I thought this episode was okay. A lot of the jokes are decent, the story is actually interesting, and the visuals in Clarinet Land are nothing short of creative. Why do so many people dislike this episode? Just because it's weird doesn't mean it's bad. Clarinet Land was supposed to be a nightmare world designed around Squidward, and they handled it pretty well. Of course, this episode isn't without its faults. For one, Squidward doesn't get to Clarinet Land until 6 minutes in, so the adventure feels too short. Also, SpongeBob's constant laughing gets obnoxious at times. They really should have had Tom Kenny redo some of these sound bites. Other than that, I personally have no problems with this episode. If only the rest of the countdown was as merciful. Number 9. Greasy Buffoons. Aaron Springer has headed a lot of unappetizing episodes, and this one's no exception. It's just a light gross-out episode where Plankton and Krabs have yet another corporate cock contest.
Medium.
Coming right up.
Homosexual representation. You're doing it wrong! After SpongeBob slips on a grease slick, Mr. Krabs gets him to help clean out the grease trap.
Right behind there.
Mr. Krabs, are you sure that was legal?
Legal?
I don't think I've mentioned how unlikable Mr. Krabs is in these newer episodes either. He's been flanderized to the point where he's not just overly greedy, but a regular criminal. But for now, I digress. Plankton finds the grease and uses it to make his food taste good, which of course has Krabs up in arms.
Chummy patties, now with edible flavor. Clearly something crabby is going on here.
Did he really just say crappy?
Something crabby is going on here.
I hope that's a fourth wall joke. The rest of the humor is just lazy.
He's a bigger fool than he realizes if he thinks old Plankton is gonna take this one lying down.
Oh. Get out of here.
Anyway, Krabs decides to fight fire with fire and starts selling Krabby Patties coated in the sizzling junk. This of course leads to the two managers sniping each other with new gimmicks, which gets old pretty fast.
Deluxe Krabby Patty.
Ultra chubby patties packed with quadruple grilled goodness.
It devolves to the point where Krabs starts selling pure grease, which finally takes its toll on the customers. Believe it or not, SpongeBob actually makes a smart decision and alerts the health inspector. And nothing happens for the rest of the episode. This lazy writing's putting me to sleep. What episode's next? Number 8. Fungus Among Us. Another boring gross out. Here SpongeBob wakes up one day to find a strange substance on his floor.
What is this stuff anyway? Doesn't seem to be coming off.
Whatever it is, it sticks to his skin and refuses to come off, so he spends half the episode scratching it.
Must stop scratching!
When Squidward checks in on him, he recognizes the affliction and calls the SWAT team.
This is the most severe case of ick yet.
What's going on, Squidward?
Didn't see that coming. The ick spreads across the restaurant while Patrick Plot Device breaks SpongeBob's quarantine. Are there any jokes in this episode?
The staff at the Krusty Krab take a solemn pledge to show up every day of the week, clean and disease-free.
Sorry I'm late, Mr. Krabs. SpongeBob SquarePants returning for duty, sir.
Typical joke. Too bored to be disgusted. Anyway, the stupid townspeople pop the bubble and spread the disease everywhere. But Gary happens to show up and is able to eat the entire... Alright, seriously, there's barely anything to say about this episode. The humor is lacking and the plot is bland. New SpongeBob, the next time you have a bad itch, I think I know someone who can help you out. Number 7. Squidward. Here's an episode I can sink my critical claws into. This is what you get when you cross one of the most generic plots in history with audience-insulting stupidity. It begins with SpongeBob repeatedly trying to get Squidward to play with him, completely blind to Squidward's disinterest. I haven't seen a rape face this unsettling since the one he made in Boating Buddies. And he's making this one while seeing Squidward naked, no less.
I will never play with you. Ever!
Something tells me that Squidward doesn't want to play today.
No shit!
SpongeBob makes a ventriloquist dummy shaped like Squidward to play with, which at first takes the burden off of Squid's shoulders. Unfortunately, things quickly spiral downhill when SpongeBob takes Mini Squid to work.
Who is that little fellow with SpongeBob?
I don't know, but isn't he handsome?
Yeah.
That's right, nobody realizes Mini Squid is a puppet and everyone begins to prefer him in place of the real Squidward.
I'm surrounded by idiots.
Now, who had the Krabby Patty and who had the Krabby Patty?
That's my joke!
He didn't even say it right. So Squidward's getting his life stolen from him because SpongeBob wouldn't respect his personal space. There are names for episodes like this, but I'll just use the term from the last countdown. Out of desperation, Squidward sees Mini Squid mesmerizing the public and ends up making a jackass out of himself.
Talk about no talent.
Maybe Squidward should get size reduction surgery so he'll dance better.
That was so wordy I forgot to laugh. Eventually Squidward snaps and begins to attack Mini Squid. That is until a music agent jumps into the story to deliver the final blow to Squidward.
You're here to sign me for a record deal? The answer to that question is a big N-O. This little fella, on the other hand, is woo-hoo-woo-hoo good.
My dreams are crushed. At least I won't have to see that Mini Squid ever again.
I have something even better. Another me!
The day this character dies will be one of grandest celebration. Number 6. SpongeBob SquarePants vs. the Big One. Abundance of misleading commercials, celebrity cameos, completely half-assed final product. Yep, it's a modern SpongeBob special. In this dreadfully underwhelming adventure, SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward get stranded on an island and can't return home unless they learn how to surf.
I don't know how to surf!
Chill out, little dude. We can teach you.
Cool!
It turns out that they're impossible to teach, so these college dropouts tell them to find a surfing legend named Jack Kahuna Laguna. For the vast majority of this special, nothing happens. When they're not just sitting around watching JKL play the bongos, they're sitting around cracking weak jokes.
SpongeBob, what are you doing with that seaweed?
Just dragging it around.
Speaking of pointless, there are a couple of extraneous plotlines featuring Mr. Krabs and Sandy. These two could have and should have been excluded from the story. All Mr. Krabs does is argue with the Flying Dutchman, while Sandy builds crap out of bamboo just to show she can. Meanwhile, our hopeless surfers learn that if they fail to surf a monster wave called the Big One, they'll be stuck on the island forever.
It's the Big One!
Yep, the Big One is just a tidal wave with a face on it. That's the most creative thing I've seen since Round Pants. So JKL sacrifices himself to the wave, and SpongeBob somehow serves the gang all the way home. Okay, first off, remember this moment from the advertisements?
One of you will not return.
Well, that was a flat-out lie. JKL throws himself into the wave, but miraculously comes back at the end. Hey, Aesthetic, what's that? Second, how did SpongeBob suddenly know how to surf? JKL barely taught them anything. All he told them was,
just keep breathing.
I'm no surfer, but I'm pretty sure surfing a monster wave takes more than just breathing. Same goes for writing. Don't just breathe, think! Number 5. Karate Island. A few of you who watched my review of Atlantis Scorpantis pointed out that they tried to glorify Sandy too much during the fight scene. It turns out that they had pulled a similar stunt with this episode.
Special delivery for SpongeBob SquarePants.
Special delivery? You think I'm special?
Yes, new SpongeBob, you certainly are. SpongeBob receives a videotape in the mail that invites him to a place called Karate Island, where he'll be crowned King of Karate.
Karate Island? I've never heard of Karate Island.
Oh, sure, Sandy. All the big karate experts go there.
But my karate is better than yours by a country mile, and I've never been invited.
Last time I checked, you two were pretty evenly matched.
That's it over there.
What makes you think that's Karate Island?
I don't know. Lucky guess?
The proprietor of the island, Master Udon, is there to greet them.
Please, show me some of your moves, Master Spongebob.
Yes, that is the voice of Mr. Miyagi. Why? The sense of badness really starts to set in when SpongeBob suddenly begins acting like an arrogant douchebag.
Mr. Udon isn't interested in a karate novice like you. He only has time for royalty. Bring on your best fighters!
You beginner luck.
SpongeBob apparently has no skill anymore, but is able to defeat Udon's fighters and take the throne.
Y'all are getting a bit wily.
Oh, do I detect a note of jealousy, Sandy?
Heck, I could karate you into a country fiddle with one paw tied behind my back.
Again, since when were you better than him? SpongeBob's douchey attitude finally gets Sandy to storm off. I wish I could do the same. As soon as she leaves, it's revealed that SpongeBob's walked right into a trap.
Who does he think he is? I taught that yellow egomaniac everything he knows about fighting, and that ain't much.
You can say that again, considering he knew karate before he even met you.
I can't handle this myself! Hold on, buddy!
She will never reach you. She must first pass through the 4 floors of fear.
Bring on the fight scenes. Oh, don't start with more stereotypes. Anyway, the first 3 fights are nothing special. The first guy attacks with tickling, the second kisses people to death, and the third just sits around while his BO fights for him. You know what the funny part is though? For these 3 fights, Sandy doesn't do any karate. Instead, she uses jelly donuts, a hairdryer, and sheer convenience.
He is forbidden to leave until he signs this contract.
What are you talking about?
Real estate.
You mean this whole thing was a scam to get us to buy real estate?
Yes.
Well, I've heard of dumber reasons to abduct people. Anyway, in an actually decent fight scene, Sandy defeats Udon and rides home with SpongeBob. Referring to what I said earlier, this episode tries to go for the female empowerment message, but doesn't do it well. Instead of suggesting gender equality, it suggests girls are god-bodied and boys are helpless pricks. I also feel a lot of people hate this episode for taking the top spot on the SpongeBob Top 100. Oh, the vast disappointment. Number 4. A Pal for Gary. The only reason this was not on my original countdown was because I had only seen it once and barely remembered it. Unfortunately, I will never be able to forget the atrocious level of stupidity SpongeBob displayed. The first part of the episode feels like a day without tears. SpongeBob can't stop worrying about Gary being home alone, resulting in an oversaturation of sap.
SpongeBob! Give this responsible pet owner 2 Krabby Patties!
Responsible pet owner.
You'll reach SpongeBob and... Come on, Gary. Oh, Gary. Ah! The 2 of us are having too much fun together to answer the phone right now. So leave a message and we'll call you right back if we ever get a break from having so much fun.
Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
Unbeknownst to SpongeBob, Gary enjoys his time alone at home watching TV westerns. Meanwhile, SpongeBob comes across a gypsy selling the most adorable creatures.
Gary's gonna be be so happy.
You must understand, these creatures can be very unstable, especially around other things.
Of course, SpongeBob doesn't pay attention to her warning. In fact, the bastard doesn't pay her anything. He just grabs the one he wants and walks away. Hopefully this comes back to bite him in the ass. SpongeBob returns home and introduces Gary to... Puffy Fluffy.
You two get to know each other. I'll be right back.
Let the torture of the innocent commence.
Eat up, you two. Gary! What happened to your manners? You be nice and share with Puffy Fluffy.
Basically, every time something happens, SpongeBob immediately blames Gary.
Gerald, it is not nice to ignore new friends.
Okay, how did he not see or hear that? This crap goes on for a while until Puffy evolves in the middle of the night. You know, throughout this entire sequence, I feel pretty sorry for Gary. He has to fight for his life against this monstrosity because his owner is blind, deaf, and incomprehensibly stupid! The battle drags on until SpongeBob wakes up the next morning.
Gary! You put Fluffy down right now! Bad boy, Gary! Bad! 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 I told you and 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 told you. Oh, hello!
If I was watching this on TV, I'd feel like doing this.
Would you like to call the cops? Do you think it's time to stop that?
You get the idea. So Gary uses what he learned from his Western hobby earlier and finally drives the beast away. But guess what? After all that crap Gary went through, SpongeBob still thinks it was all his fault, and thus deprives him of the joy he rightly deserves.
From now on, I'm taking you wherever I go.
If anyone here deserved to be punished, it was you! None of this would have happened if you hadn't stolen that damn thing in the first place!
Well, I didn't steal it, silly. I borrowed it.
Go suck Viacoms! Keep it together, MoBros. Only 3 more to go. Number 3. Whatever happened to SpongeBob? AKA Bob Wetpants. I think we all know by now that these guys couldn't make a compelling special to save their asses. The gimmick this time around is that SpongeBob gets amnesia. Okay, there's a little more to it. SpongeBob pisses off all his friends one day to the point where they don't want anything to do with him.
Idiot boy.
Idiot boy.
Idiot boy!
I guess that's it then.
So he decides to leave Bikini Bottom forever. As a result, he falls off a cliff, loses his memory, and tries to start a new life in a place called New Kelp City. Meanwhile, Bikini Bottom starts falling apart because no one's getting their Krabby Patties. That's a good reason to burn the city to the ground. Amidst the chaos, the rest of the gang formulates a plan to get SpongeBob back. Like other episodes I've reviewed, this one has a lot of mean-spirited overtones, which effectively kills the humor they go for.
Real drag, isn't it? Having to stand around a fire for warmth every night?
Yeah.
Not for us. We're just waiting in line for a new video game.
Also, the conflict in this episode is one of the worst I've seen in a while. SpongeBob struggles to make a living in New Kelp City because a certain group of Grease ripoffs doesn't like Bubbles.
Fucking Bubbles!
Well, I can't say I'm too surprised. This was written and directed by the same jackasses that made this! And so, with the power of Bubbles, SpongeBob runs the gang out of the city and becomes the mayor. Nothing happens from this point forward. Except his friends bring him back to Bikini Bottom and end up restoring his memory. It's not creative, it's not funny, it's just another miserable tool they used to farm viewers. Oh, and the gang's leader was voiced by Ray Liotta. Just another cameo they went and wasted. Number 2. Face Freeze. Dear Lord! I got messages and comments and messages for weeks on end telling me how this episode is some kind of unholy terror. I cannot wait to put this thing to bed, so here's my evaluation. It opens with, you guessed it, SpongeBob and Patrick making weird faces at each other.
Haven't you ever heard this saying? If you don't stop making that face, it'll freeze that way. Oh! Let me tell you the story. Face freeze.
Oh no, it's the main drain all over again! This time around, however, Krabs' legend is a little more credible. He tells of this guy who liked to be a jerk and make faces at people.
Till one day, when he stuck his tongue out for the 444th time, his face froze!
Put that thing away! They're like children here!
At first the duo tries to heed Mr. Krabs' warning, but...
Is there a gas leak in here?
After that odd sequence, SpongeBob and Patrick decide to hold one face for a long time to see if the face freeze is real, and while doing so, they rudely strut their morbid faces out in public.
You two need help.
Couldn't have said it better myself. After holding their faces for an entire day, their misbehavior comes full circle.
I can't move my face at all.
Patrick, Sandy was right. We need help.
Wait, that wasn't just a fleeting joke? I'm actually impressed.
Y'all need to relax them facial muscles. What y'all need is a massage.
And you're a licensed masseuse, right, Sandy?
Anyone notice something missing here? Now, back on my last countdown, a lot of you noticed a similar error in house sitting for Sandy.
Why are you wearing that funny thing on your head?
Well, 'cause we can't breathe in Sandy's tree dome, remember?
Oh yeah, thanks for reminding me. I almost forgot.
There you go.
Huh, that was pointless. It almost looks like a cover-up for an animation goof. That's what it felt like. They forgot about the helmet, so they used a joke to cover it up. Here, they forget entirely. I guess the artists were too busy screwing around with the facial designs. For the last part of the episode, SpongeBob tries to keep his face hidden from Mr. Krabs, but ultimately gets caught.
You couldn't heed me warning, could you?
I'm sorry, Mr. Krabs. We thought it was just one of your stories.
I'm losing business because you thought I was telling one of me stories? I could just... I can't move my face!
Wait, how did that happen so fast?
Crabs too? My face!
So the authority figure and the innocent bystander get the face freeze for no reason. And of course Squidward gets the worst one. Well guys, after finally seeing this, I can honestly say, it's pretty underrated. Seriously, I didn't find this anywhere near as bad as people were making it out to be. Yes, it relies mostly on low comedy, and the ending was a slap in the face. But I feel it had some potential that people don't give it credit for. To me, it felt like watching one of Grimm's fairy tales, a story designed to encourage kids to behave. For the most part, they did it right. SpongeBob and Patrick get warned not to misbehave, but they do so anyway and get punished for their actions. The only thing undermining this message is, again, the ending, which should have been more like Hooky or Life of Crime. A lot of people rip on this episode for being disgusting, but I thought that one face from Who Bob What Pants was worse than most of the faces here. Bottom line, I truly don't think this is one of the absolute worst episodes. Phew, finally got that one out of the way. Time for the last episode. Number 1. Truth or Square? Well, 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 if it isn't the closest relative to Atlantis Squarepantis. This overhyped monster was made to celebrate SpongeBob's 10th anniversary, and boy did they screw up. Lord, where do I start? I know, the advertisement campaign. They drew everyone in this time using a needlessly high amount of celebrities and a ton of gimmicks. All the secrets are coming out. We're going to reveal the Krabby Patty formula. SpongeBob and Sandy get married. Okay, by this point in the series, many of us already knew none of that was gonna happen. Regardless, it's still a prominent example of the shameless rating traps they turn these specials into. So what about the actual episode? For one, the story is terrible. SpongeBob and the gang prepare to celebrate the Krusty Krab's 11th anniversary, but end up getting stuck in the freezer. Then they spend the entire special roaming the air ducts and having random flashbacks. Any clever jokes in this special were extremely few and very far between. Also, even though the special clocks in at 50 minutes, it's actually just over a half hour excluding all the extraneous crap they threw in. And by extraneous crap, I mean a hideous patchy plotline and a bunch of scenes that look like DVD extras slapped together. Even though they say this special got many positive reviews, you all voted, I reviewed it, and I can firmly join you in saying Truth or Square is one of the worst SpongeBob episodes of all time. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks to all of you who voted. Now, I'm off to script my Q&A panel. Sincerely, MoBrosStudios.